What's going on? I'm Marcus. You're at the channel of the Debt Free Dad, where we're following my financial freedom journey and learning about finance. But today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's Free Game Friday, and sometimes on Free Game Friday, when I want to do a Free Game Friday, I kind of talk about something that just kind of caught my eye in the news. And a few people actually reached out to me on social, uh, wanting to know my take on this. So we're going to talk about Travis Scott, the whole Astroworld Fest incident. Who's responsible? So before we dive in, got to give the caveat, I'm a licensed attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So if you're looking for legal advice, financial advice, any other advice that's not just my personal opinion, because that's all you're getting right here, go somewhere else if you're looking for anything outside of my personal opinion. So let's talk about what happened. What's the deal with Travis Scott? What's going on? Now, before I even delve in, I want to talk about, I don't think sometimes people realize how much music can influence us. I mean, music is a really powerful thing. A certain song could play and you may start crying, you may smile, you may get angry. You can hear a song and it can make you recall a memory like damn near verbatim as if it happened just yesterday. So music is a very powerful tool. It does have the ability to influence emotion and behavior. Now, couple on top of that, especially when you're young, hey, I'm probably aging myself, but I grew up when crunk music was kind of the big deal, and I can remember being out in the club and the lyrics will say, "If you see a buster in the club, pour a drink on him." And we was actually doing that crazy shit. We could have got shot, killed, anything else. I mean, pushing people, hitting people. Stuff can get crazy. That was just out in a club environment. So I can imagine at concerts, you got mosh pits going on. So that's just the kind of caveat that music can really influence behavior and emotions, probably more than any other form of entertainment, honestly. Um, yeah, like I'm not gonna watch a movie and want to go out and act crazy or throwing elbows on people. So I just wanted to start out with that. So let's talk about it. All right, this event was in Texas, I believe it was Houston. It was about 50,000 attendees at this particular concert. Now, according to articles and things I saw, apparently hundreds of people got injured. 8 people, unfortunately, rest in peace to all of them and bless their families. 8 people lost their lives, all because of a crowd surge. Essentially, what a crowd surge is when a large group of people make a sudden movement or flow into one direction or another in a confined space that often results in people falling over, getting pushed, potentially getting trampled, and the whole nine. And that's essentially what happened here. And so right now, one of the things we know that there is a criminal investigation ongoing. I'll tell you, just me personally, I think it would be very hard to, well, you can charge anybody with anything, but it would have to be some very strong evidence to find an individual has some type of criminal exposure or culpability. I actually looked it up. The only thing that I could find, and hey, if any of you attorneys out there in Texas, I know I got a few, my home girl, I got a few out there who practicing. Y'all tell me y'all take on it. But I did look it up in Texas. The only thing that could potentially be applicable, just kind of based on these facts, is manslaughter. And for manslaughter in Texas to be applicable, it requires recklessness. So you have to have a blatant disregard for a risk. So a good scenario or example, and I'm not saying this happened, this is just an example. For instance, let's say before the show happened, the fire marshal said that this capacity can only take 40,000 people. And the event promoters, the executives, whoever is running everything in charge, essentially said, okay, we got it. They got it, only 40,000 people. And they say, nah, we just going to flood the scene and get everybody in. In that instance, had the same situation occur, then that individual who made that call will have some real criminal exposure for manslaughter because there was reckless disregard of a known risk. There was a known risk that capacity over $40,000 would pose a risk and could put people in jeopardy. They blatantly ignored it. Boom, you got your manslaughter exposure there. Now, that was just a hypothetical. I'm not saying that's happened, but I'd be shocked. It's going to be interesting. I'd be shocked to see if there's any criminal culpability surrounding an individual that results from this. I think the more likely scenario, the more likely thing is going to happen is, and we have already seen lawsuits filed against Travis Scott, Drake, all the parent companies. And so the more likely scenario is going to be negligence or wrongful death. They're really kind of the same legal analysis that you would do. Um, Essentially, in order to prove that somebody was negligent, you need four things. You would have to have duty, breach, causation, and damages. Duty did, for example, duty could be something to the effect of did the did the event planners have a duty to ensure that the event had the appropriate control mechanisms to ensure that the crowd couldn't get out of hand and to ensure that they had adequate medical response when needed. That could be the duty. Then breaches was their conduct by an individual that breached that duty that they had to make sure everybody was safe and provide medical services. Causation is simply did this breach of duty cause the actual harm? Because they failed to do their job, did it cause the harm that these people suffer, which led to injury and in some instances death? And then damages is just actual damages. You're talking about physical damages. You're talking about people injured, not being able to go to work. So you're going to have loss of wages. You're going to have physical harm that people suffer. You're going to have emotional harm that people suffered. I looked on TV, and I mean, it's terrible to see the amount of people who were just crying and distraught. And we're not even talking about. I mean, they said over 100 people were injured and 8 people died. But the people who are going to have emotional distress from this, I mean, there's people who saw their loved ones, their brothers stomped out, trampled, and died. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of criminal, not criminal, excuse me. There's going to be a lot of exposure to a civil case for negligence. And so now let's just kind of talk about the numbers side of it. Essentially, what happens is a concept called respondeat superior. Essentially, what that means in layman's terms is the boss is responsible for the acts of the employee. So if I own a, if I'm P Diddy, if I'm Puffy and my bodyguard punches somebody who's standing in my way, and this guy sues, because I'm the boss, I employ this bodyguard. I could potentially be responsible for the acts of that bodyguard, depending on certain factors. If the bodyguard is an independent contractor, I may not be liable, but essentially, respondeat superior means that if an employee engages in conduct that causes some type of harm or damage, based on the facts, the employer could potentially be liable. And so when we look at the numbers, Travis Scott net worth is about $60 million. Drake's net worth is about $200 million. Both of these guys perform. You have Live Nation, who's owned by Liberty Media Corporation. You have Rock Nation, who owns over 50% of Live Nation. And it looks like, just based on some open source research, it looks like Live Nation has a market cap of something like $25 billion. So in general, what's going to happen, like you're already seeing, people are going to file all of these lawsuits, and it's going to name Travis Scott, it's going to name Drake, it's going to name Live Nation, it's going to name Rock Nation. It's probably they're going to probably throw Jay-Z name in there. In these civil lawsuits, y'all already know what it is. You just kind of throw everybody on there as a potential. Hey, I'm the plaintiff. I'm filing these charges against everybody. Let the court sort them out. I don't think that there'll be. I think it would be difficult to find personal civil liability on the actual performers. From what I've seen, what I've read in open source research, it looks like only 2 individuals actually had the authority to stop the show. Now, let's just kind of think about this from a commonsensical standpoint. It's 50,000 people in there. You're an artist, you're on stage performing, people are shouting, stop the show. It's hard to delineate and make sense of what's being said. I mean, I just think that it's difficult to put the conduct of the audience, or the his or the failure to stop the show at the time this harm occurred directly on a performer. I think that's just a daunting task. Most performers are in a zone when they're ready to go perform. It's going to be hard to. You see people moving in the crowd, shouting out stuff all the time. So I think from a civil standpoint, I think Drake, Travis Scott, all the performers, I think there's a very low likelihood that they'll be individually liable. I think the persons who will be more liable in this instance is going to be Live Nation, is going to be the companies behind putting the event together. And I do believe with this criminal investigation, they're actually going to look at, because think about it, you can't do these concerts without getting certain approval by the city, the county, and so forth. So I think what they're going to do is, as any investigation would, they're going to kind of backtrack and see, were there any systematic failures done by the employees or the event planners for that particular event? Did they follow all the rules, regulations, requirements? And so right now you're hearing a lot of people saying, "Oh, cancel these type of events," but that's not. I mean, it happens all the time. I even looked it up. The attorney that looks like Travis Scott got is an attorney who actually represented like a rock band back in '03 when they had an event where a fire broke out and hundreds of people died or something to that effect. And so that's just kind of my take on it. It's a fucked up situation. I mean, I saw in the news it was like a 14-year-old passed away. A guy passed away saving his fiance from trying to be trampled over the crowd. It's just a terrible thing. But from the video footage I saw, I can't see any reason why direct civil or criminal culpability will fall on the artist itself. Now, I will tell you, and this is kind of how I'm gonna close this out. I think, from my understanding, Travis Scott and Drake are individuals who've been named in this lawsuit. And again, like I said, in this lawsuit, they're going to name the performers. They're going to go after everybody who has a bag that they can recover from. So they're going to name Travis Scott, Drake, Live Nation, Rock Nation, Jay-Z. They're going to throw the whole nine in there, as they should. I mean, that's what I would advise anybody to do if I was representing them. But essentially, I think that the way Drake is handling this is the correct way, and the way that Travis Scott is handling it is not the correct way. And I'm just talking about from a legal standpoint. I think morally, I think that Travis Scott is saying and doing all the right things. He's on IG and social looking distraught. He's said he's going to cover the funeral expenses. He's going to pay for counseling and all this other stuff. And I think morally that's a good look. But from a legal standpoint, if he was my client, I would be like, don't do. I don't see Drake doing any of that shit. And pardon my language, but I just think that it's kind of, you want to be real cautious in the legal world. It's like when someone gets charged with a criminal charge and they tell you don't say anything until you talk to your lawyer, because certain statements can be taken as a potential admission of guilt or as conduct that only a person who was guilty would do. Now, even though I don't think, and I think it'll be difficult to find them individually civilly liable, and I'd be shocked if anything criminal came out unless they can find that reckless disregard for a known risk. But I think in this instance, just, if I were representing these guys, I would say don't say anything about it, make no comment about it, and just kind of let the legal situation, let the attorney speak for you. That's always, just don't say shit when it's something. The slightest thing can be conduct that potentially shows you had some culpability, or you felt like you were at fault, and you definitely want to try to avoid that. I mean, there's crazy ways you can do it. If I'm Travis Scott and I'm worth $60 million, I mean, you can have a foundation. You can donate money to a foundation who would assist with the funeral costs and all this other stuff. So I don't know if he's trying to get credit for it. And again, I commend him. I think morally is the right thing to do. But from a legal standpoint, man, shut up. Don't say anything. Let the legal process play out. There are smarter ways that you can take care of funeral expenses. There are smarter ways that you can take care of getting people, in front of counselors and things to get over the emotional stress. There's ways you can handle that without you having to go on IG to do it independently yourself. There's ways you can do that through third parties, through an LLC that's underneath an LLC that's inside of a partnership that's under a corporation. I mean, I would potentially recommend going that route, but I just wanted to, just kind of give my quick take on it. At the end of the day, I'd be shocked if anything criminal comes from it. If it does, it's going to have to be someone who just blatantly ignored a known risk. Um, I think the more likely scenario, there's going to be civil liability big time, but I think the artist in this particular instance will probably have a good chance to avoid being individually liable. But the event planners, the companies who plan this event, Rock Nation, Live Nation, they definitely gonna cough up a bag. And typically, what happens, and I did some open source research, a lot of times performers and companies have insurance policies to protect against this type of thing. It's not uncommon for things to go wrong at a concert and they want to have some coverage. So the same thing I preach to you as an individual, you want to have insurance to play defense to protect your money. That's the same thing that these companies do when they plan the events. I'm sure they have some type of insurance policy to cover that particular performance, and there's a strong likelihood that that policy will be on the hook for a payout for damages that occurred that were outside of a certain scope of something to that effect. But anyway, that's it. That's my short rant on it. I just wanted to give my quick take on it. Let me know what y'all think in the comments if y'all haven't heard about it. I'll put a link in the description box to either the article or video just kind of talking about it. But it's a terrible situation. I definitely hope that it's fucked up. Rest in peace to the people who lost lives. Bless their families, the people who were injured, and I hope just monetarily, this is what the legal process is for. Hopefully, they can do something to help those families get back on the road to be, their healing. You can't really make nobody whole from the loss of a life, but hopefully, they can find some remedy through the legal system that can help them toward the recovery process and to move forward. Y'all take care. I know this was kind of somber. Ugh. Y'all take care. I love y'all. Have a good weekend. Be blessed. Peace. And if you're still tuned in, check out the videos in the boxes below. More videos related to, hey, my financial freedom journey and financial education. And I also got a playlist, if you check it out, related to Free Game Friday when I want to just talk about some random topics. And if you haven't, hit that circle all the way to the right to subscribe to the channel.